Hi, this is John Rowell for the Rowell Report. Today is Thursday, October 16, 2025, and we're now in a kind of alternate universe in which President Trump speaks to world leaders and comes back with striking declarations on their behalf, becoming a kind of a public relations officials, kind of a gossip reporter for what other world leaders are saying and thinking and deciding. So we had President Trump stating that he spoke to President Modi, Prime Minister Modi of India, and Modi told him that India was done with Russian oil. They were going to cut off all purchases of Russian oil, and there would be no more Russian oil for India. And so President Trump came and was so happy. He declared that finally Prime Minister Modi saw the light. He was no longer going to be buying oil from Russia and no longer supporting the Russian war machine. And with this, Russia's edifice was going to begin to collapse and they would be forced to come to the table. So that was a story from President Trump. And so he put that out pretty late. And you can imagine that, India's on the other side of the world. And so they're not going to get that news exactly immediately. And they're not going to be responding in real time if that's true or not true. And I was thinking about reporting on this yesterday and how I kind of suspected that this was a bit of an overstatement. But needless to say, I couldn't have expected what came out from India. And India said they don't recall any phone call between President Trump and Prime Minister Modi yesterday. So President Trump assures us that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi, and Prime Minister Modi gave him this declaration, this very definitive declaration. And so on the other hand, you have India. What phone call? Prime Minister Modi didn't speak to President Trump. The last time he spoke to him was October 9th. And they didn't even discuss Russian oil. So we're in kind of this alternate universe where President Trump believes he spoke to someone and then decides that fictitious phone call is worth reporting. And not only that, he's going to become a gossip reporter for these other world leaders, and he's going to state their policy very clearly. And so I don't know, does President Trump need another medical checkup? Why would he report that he spoke to Prime Minister Modi of India if he didn't even speak to him? And then he stated that Prime Minister Modi declared that Russian oil was no longer on our petroleum menu. So that's another false statement, because the government of India made a very clear and unambiguous statement that India is a purchaser of oil from anywhere, and they will purchase oil and gas for their needs based on market conditions and what is convenient for their people and for their economy. So that is quite a bit different than saying, you know what, we're done with Russian oil. We're done supporting that war machine. So now we're kind of wondering what's going on with President Trump and how is he, coming up with all these phone calls that take place maybe in an alternate universe, maybe with a alternate version of Prime Minister Modi. So this can be rather disturbing for individuals who wonder of the mental health of the most important leader in the world, which is the president of the United States. So if President Trump is not mentally stable, odd things could happen at any time. So anyway, possibly what happened was President Trump was going to try to force Prime Minister Modi to accept a position by coming out with a fictitious phone call and coming out with a statement representing the decision of Prime Minister Modi on Russian oil. So, and then Prime Minister Modi would feel pressured to accept what President Trump said out of their friendship. He didn't want to embarrass his friend. So, I don't know. That even sounds kind of odd and suspicious. So, anyway, closing out this point, it is really odd that President Trump would be so fixated on the energy policies of other countries, especially India. So, if you were the leader of Canada, and then you started making declarations about the energy policy of Mexico or the energy policy of Japan, or Japan making a declaration about the energy policy of the Philippines, or the Philippines making a declaration of the energy policy of Australia. Well, wouldn't you think that these countries would make their own declarations on their energy policy and not, all this, I'm going to make a statement, a definitive statement regarding the energy policy of another country. Well, that's for the other country to decide and to announce. And if Prime Minister Modi had a phone call with President Trump, and at some point they discussed energy policy, it's not President Trump's role or within his sphere to be able to put out declarations from other leaders of other countries. So if President Trump thought that he would, become more buddy-buddy with Prime Minister Modi of India, I think now things are probably going in the opposite direction, because the people of India are very independent, and they don't like to be treated poorly. They don't like to have words put in their mouth. And also, the people of India during the whole Cold War were always essentially neutral, dealing with the United States, dealing with the Soviet Union. The people of India aren't going to be forced to take sides. So if President Trump thinks that he can force Prime Minister Modi to pick a side and stick with it, especially pick the United States, have higher energy costs, screw over the farmers of India, which is a big part of their economy and which is very important to get elected and stay in office, is to pick good policy for the farmers, then he's becoming delusional. But I think the fact that he said that he spoke with the world leader, and then that world leader made a declaration, and he felt that he felt obliged to become the PR rep of Prime Minister Modi to put out this supposed new policy, I think really is disturbing. So this is huge overreach on the part of the United States to try to get involved in the energy policy of India and try to state their policy and try to tell them what to do and tell them who they can buy from and who they can't buy from. Then I think they'll find out very quickly that India is not going to be putting up with that at all. So Anyway, as a conclusion to this video, now President Trump is talking about a meeting with President Putin, that they're going to meet in 2 weeks in Budapest. So I guess we'll wait for Russia to confirm that phone call took place and that the meeting is confirmed. Now, if President Trump gives Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine, I think this meeting is sayonara. So I wouldn't bank on this meeting taking place, but obviously it could be a good step towards a final peace agreement. But President Trump, he listens to the Russians and then he just, I don't care. I'm gonna go with our neocon strategy, our neocon ideas, and I don't care what the Russian they can talk so that they feel like they're being listened to. But in the end, I'm not gonna pay any attention to that. So I think the Russians understand that if there was any reason to have a meeting between President Putin and President Trump, possibly it would be regarding the extension of these nuclear treaties. There's one that's going to expire next year, so maybe they're going to discuss that whole scenario. But what President Trump wants is for an agreement to be made between the United States, Russia, and China. And Russia said, well, if you're going to bring another country into this agreement like China, well, let's bring in England and France. So anyway, and that's not going to get anywhere. England and France are not going to allow their nuclear facilities to be visited and inspected by Russian or Chinese officials. So anyway, I think President Trump is back barking up the wrong tree. So we'll see where this goes. But I think President Trump really needs another visit, maybe to the ear, nose, and throat doctor so they can check his hearing. Maybe he was talking to the pizza delivery guy and he thought it was Modi, or maybe he thought the guy, his name was something like Modi, and it's like, oh, I'm talking to Modi. So I don't know, but something is really, really wrong. Maybe Prime Minister Modi will come out with his own declaration and say, hey, we spoke briefly, but I didn't make any commitment or anything. But the Indian government and Prime Minister Modi have been very clear. Their energy policy is their own. No one's going to be influencing them, and they're not going to be told to stop purchasing Russian oil because it's in their best interest for their farmers to have low price energy, and Russian oil provides them that opportunity. So this also provides their farmers with greater sustainability. They can make more of a profit. That's a better money policy for their whole country to keep their energy prices low. And so and why would they abandon that to go and become this vassal state of the United States? So I think that this whole situation is a little disturbing, but certainly not unexpected from President Trump. And now we'll have to see what goes on with this meeting with President Putin. But like I say, if those Tomahawks show up in Ukraine and they're fired into Russia, I think this meeting is off. So anyway, I thank you for joining me today for this video. If you like this video, please hit the like button. If you want to make a comment, any comment you want to make, it's great. I'd like to hear from you. Please leave a comment below and subscribe. That helps this channel. So anyway, I want to thank you again for joining me, and I wish you the very best. Have a good day. Bye bye.